Hey, welcome back. I'm TJ. We're back with Jonas again, not even trying his last name. If you don't know who Jonas is, he's joined us quite a few times now and has really been the driving force behind coming up with a setup for the Radiomaster TX16s and the OMPHobby M1, just like he's got in his hand there. And a lot of people have really loved what Jonas has done and what he's brought to, well, kind of the M1, soon to be M2. Don't tell nobody. Really, the one standout feature that he introduced, well, not really introduced, but brought to us anyway, was the rescue setup, using nothing more than the M1's own stability feature in there. But otherwise, Jonas, I'll let you plug who you are and what you do.
Oh yes, I'm Jonas from Germany. I work for AccuRC Precision Simulation, one of the market-leading RC flight simulators for helicopters and soon-to-be airplanes. I do all the model setups. I'm responsible for the physics. I did some instructional videos for learning how to fly 3D, and I'm basically one of the main developers of the simulator, together with Zane and Adrian.
Yeah, and they're awesome. Like, honestly, I'm sorry to cut you off right there, but I mean, it is such a big deal for me because AccuRC has helped me grow so much in helicopters, where when I started here I really had no idea other than how to fly them around the yard a little bit. So the content that Jonas has helped create with AccuRC, as well as his own channel, definitely check those out. Links in the description. But this video specifically is tying into how to set up the rescue switch that Jonas brought to us, and really from start to finish. So if you follow along step by step with this video, you're going to be able to have the same experience without needing to use Jonas's full model file, and you can actually just implement this rescue into the model file you already have set up. So I'll shut up and we'll listen to the expert now.
So yeah, it may be the case that you already have a model setup that suits your needs and you just want to add this rescue mode to it. So how are you going to go about this? First off, you need a helicopter. Then you need a preferably OpenTX radio with, ignore this beautiful GoPro attached to it that's recording my screen, where you can do all this kind of stuff. There may be other radios, but this guide is specific to OpenTX and the TX16s. And let's take a look at how to set up rescue. Let's dive right in. So the first thing we want to do is define our switches. And for that, we are gonna use logical switches because these allow us to do quite a bit more than just your standard rescue setup. So we're scrolling over here to the logical switches, and you see I have a couple in here and I've deleted some. That's just for this video. You just would use the first ones that come in handy and go from there. So we are doing a RPM dependent rescue mode. So your 3 flight modes usually will require different collective inputs for different climb rates. So we are basically building 3 different rescue modes that switch depending on where your switches are. So what you want to start with is, I'm going to use LO1, LO2 and LO3 to just tell the radio where my flight mode switches are at. So we're going to do a comparison with A smaller than X and assign our flight mode switch. For me that is SE, which is this switch up here. So I'm gonna flip that once and you can see when the switch is switched away from me, this little text here lights up. If it's flipped towards me or in the center, it does not light up. We do that 2 more times with different functions. Here we're going to do A equals X, same switch again, SE. You can see when the switch is in the center, LO2 lights up. And for L3, we're gonna do A larger than X and gonna flip the switch. And as you can see, switch away from me, LO1 lights, switch in the middle, LO2 lights, switch up, LO3 lights. Second step, we're gonna tell it what switch we want our rescue on. My switches are actually flipped. I resoldered them, so SF is actually my spring-loaded switch and SH is my throttle hold switch. On a typical Radiomaster as you get it, SH is your spring-loaded switch, but for this tutorial we're gonna use my spring-loaded switch just for the sake of demonstration. So what we're gonna do with the next logical switch, for me it's LO6 because I have some others set up. we're gonna go in here and gonna set that to A larger X, and then pull the rescue switch. And you can see as I pull the rescue switch, this lights up. If I let go, this goes out. Now we told the radio where our RPMs are and where our rescue switch is gonna be. And now we're gonna take three more logical switches to tell it in what combinations we want to use these switches. So I'm gonna scroll down a bit here. You would probably just use the next one that's free, but I've structured this a little bit differently. So we're gonna continue at 11, 12, and 13. And these are gonna be AND type functions. So we're gonna say AND, and here we're gonna plug in the switch where our rescue is. In this case, it's LO6. Gonna have to go looking for that. Here it is. So you can see LO6 lights up when I pull rescue. And since this is an AND type function, I can now combine this with my RPM switch. Actually, we're gonna use the switch we defined above, so LO1. And you can see now that L11 will not light up unless I pull rescue and put my RPM switch to the lowest position. You see these two are now on, and this just lit up. So if I let go of rescue, this does not light up. If I have my RPM switch in any other position and pull rescue, this does not light up. It does only light up when the lowest RPM and rescue are active. We're gonna do that 2 more times. Both an AND switch for LO6. Just gotta find it here real quick, LO6. And here we are gonna do LO2. So this one is gonna light up when the RPM switch is in the middle and you pull rescue, L12 lights. And we're gonna do that again with L13. Once again an AND switch, LO6 for the first input and LO3 for the third input. And as you can see now, we have now LO6 in all 3 and L01, O2, O3. So when I switch my RPMs, lowest RPM this one lights, middle RPM this one lights, highest RPM this one lights. If I pull rescue, these 3 functions become active, and that's what we're going to use to switch our collective curves. Now that we have that defined, go to our Inputs tab, and we're gonna set up channel 5. Channel 5 is your self-leveling channel, so that pretty much determines when your heli is gonna self-level. So we're gonna go in here. I've already named this rescue. You can do that yourself up here. And then we're gonna define as the source the LO6 switch, which my rescue switch is on. So if I switch rescue, you can see the output jumps +100, -100. Since the M1 works in a way where +100 is 3D mode and -100 is self-level mode, we have to set the weight to -100% so that when our rescue switch is off, we're in normal 3D mode. And if we pull the rescue switch, it self-levels by going to -100%. So you see rescue pulled, output is down here at -100, rescue released, output is up here at +100. So now that we have the input defined, we can go into curves and set up some curves for our rescue modes. And you will need 4 curves for this. 1 for flat collective, which we're going to in the instant the rescue switch is pulled, and then 3 curves for your 3 RPMs. So I've got a couple curves set up here, so you just pick the first one that's free, doesn't really matter. For me it's 8 through 11. And we're gonna start with the first curve. Name that something like rescue 1 or R, or no, actually name this 0 because it's the 0 collective curve. We're gonna go to count 2 points, and we are gonna set this to all 0. So the entire output needs to be 0, 0, 0, flat line. No matter where the input is, it's always gonna output 0. That is our first curve. Second curve, we're gonna name something like, I would go all fancy with this if it wasn't for a video, but we're just gonna name this R1. we're gonna set the point count to 2. And we're gonna, since this is for our first flight mode, we want the most collective in this mode. So we're gonna make this a flat line at like, let's say 90%. 90%. And once again, we have a flat line here. So no matter where the input is, the output is gonna be 90%. Now we're gonna do that 2 more times with slightly different percentages, and you can tweak these depending on your setup of your helicopter, of how you fly, how much collective you've set. So we're gonna do R2, 2 points, and we're gonna set this for demonstration purposes. Let's make this a bit more drastic. Let's make this 70% because this is at 6,000 RPM. 70 is sufficient there. So flat line at 70, no matter where the input is, output 70. Do that once more. For rescue curve number 3, R3. No, not R3B. 2 points, and we are gonna go and set this to, say, 60. 60 and 60, once again a flat line, no matter where the input is, output is plus 60%. Now that we have our 3 or 4 curves set, R0 at flat line at 0, R1 high collective, R2 a bit lower, R3 a bit lower than that, we can head over to our mixes and make all the magic happen. So you can see in my channel 6, which is the collective channel, if I move my collective stick, this channel changes. I already have 3 curves set. You don't have to have 3 curves set for your normal flight modes. You can fly with 1, you can fly with 2, as you desire. We're just gonna add curves below that. So we're gonna go in and gonna go to long press and insert after and name this mix something recognizable, for example, also I don't know, does this? No, it does not. R0. Okay, name this. Then we are gonna scroll down. The input collective is fine. Scroll down to curve, custom, and set this to the curve we just created for rescue 0, R0. This is my custom curve I just created. And then we're gonna add a switch, which in this case will be the hold switch we defined in logical switches earlier, LO6. LO6 means that as soon as I pull the hold, the rescue switch, this curve will become active, and we have to actually set this to replace. So once I pull my rescue switch, you can see the collective output immediately drops to 0. Once that's done, you can see I can move my collective channel normally. When I pull rescue, nothing. Jumps straight to 0, and at this point the helicopter goes to 0 collective and flips. Now, once it's flipped, we don't want it to just fly into the ground, so we're gonna add some more mixes. So we're gonna insert after, name this thing like, I don't know, something recognizable like R1. Input collective is fine. The weight is 100%, and we're gonna go to curve. Gonna set a custom curve, and we're gonna select our R1 curve, which we added earlier. As a switch, we are going to select the L11 switch, which we defined earlier, which, if you remember, that was the switch that combined the lowest RPM and the rescue switch, so that it only becomes active if these 2 conditions are met. So we're gonna scroll through, gonna go to L11, set this to replace, and now you should see that if I pull rescue, the output will go to 0, and if I switch down my RPM to the first RPM, the output will jump to 90%. Now this is only true if I'm in the lowest RPM. but we don't want it to go immediately to 90%, so we're gonna set a delay in switching up to 0.3 seconds. So what you will see now, if I'm in the lowest RPM and pull rescue, collective channel 0, 90. 0.3 seconds later, 0, 90, and that's the secret. We are now gonna do that 2 more times. Add a mix, name it go to curve, custom, define the second rescue curve we just made, and then as a switch, you're gonna define the second switch that we made to combine the center RPM or second RPM with the rescue switch. Multiplex gonna set to replace, delay up 0.3 seconds, and we can check if that works. So if we go to our middle RPM and pull rescue, watch the bar, drops to 0 and then jumps to the 70% we set earlier. If we go to the first RPM, it's still gonna jump to 90, middle RPM gonna jump to 70, just as we want. Now we do that once more, insert after, mix name, I don't know, R3, curve custom, R3, switch, third switch, which combines the highest RPM with our rescue switch, in my case L13. Multiplex, replace, delay up, 0.3 seconds, and we can check this again, switch into the highest RPM, set it to some collective number, watch the bar, I pull rescue now, and you see it goes to 0.3 seconds later to 60. And that is our rescue setup. You can see it once again here. First curve is R0, which drops the collective to 0 as soon as rescue is pulled. Then rescue 1, 2, and 3, tied to L11, 12, and 13, which were our switches combined with the rescue switch. And now we can try this on the helicopter. You can fold the blades to visualize this better. So we have the helicopter here. Nice and easy. And now if we go to the first RPM and pull rescue, you should see the blades briefly coming together and then splitting apart to the positive. Let's see if that works. Yes. Second RPM, blades coming apart, not splitting as far. You can take my face as a reference. If I place this so that the blade is aligned with my eyebrow and my nostril, this is rescue in the first mode, this is rescue in the second mode, and third RPM, they're even closer together. And that's it. You just successfully set up a rescue switch for your own transmitter setup.
And I think really what it does is it allows people to grasp kind of how it's set up, and then especially with those 3 different curves. So depending on your specific flight modes, you know, you can actually go in and dial in those rescue mode curves to better suit. So if 90% is going to send you to the moon right now and you don't need that, you can actually dial it back. So while it does, yeah, this video step by step shows you how to set it up, it also gives you the flexibility to kind of change things as you want. And that's really the biggest drive for this video, is to give you the tools to do things the way you want, and not just here's a model file, figure it out, right? So, you know, as always, it's always humbling for, you know, to sit here and listen to Jonas. You know, he could fully do this by himself without me sitting here being a hype man, but you really, I just want you to know how much I appreciate you taking the time out to really walk everybody through these setups, man. It's been shaking things up, and I love watching people learn from you.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. There's one more thing I want to mention, because since we all did this with the logical switches, you can now easily change around where your rescue switch is. You know, we did all this setup with all these different kind of mixes and curves and switches, but it all comes down to changing this little input where you defined your rescue switch. You can, for example, I want to have it on SC. I set this to SC, and if I pull SC now, I mean, SC is up here. I've never used this for rescue. Still works. Give me lower RPM. Still works. Easily redefined. You can have it anywhere you want with one switch changed.
All right, so that's rescue. That's how you do it for yourself without using a model file. Jonas, dude, honestly, I just said it. I'm going to say it again. I really appreciate you spending all this time, not just on the video with me, but testing things, getting to the end of the transmitter, figuring out how to do it. And then not only that, but listening to feedback. You know, not everybody can do that. And you do it really, really well, where you take the feedback and you grow from it, and you give us more than really you should. So, you know, from me and the entire community alike, seriously, thank you for your time, man.
It's my pleasure. Always striving to help people. And if we can save you a couple bucks by not crashing your heli, I mean, I guess it's bad for you because you sell less parts. But
Not at all, man. Not at all.
It's if it helps anyone and saves their model even once, it's absolutely worth it.
All right, guys, if you're not subscribed, don't forget to click the subscribe button, push the bell so you can see when Jonas's beautiful face is on this channel. Like the video if you've learned something. Leave us a comment. Let Jonas know how awesome he is. And otherwise, appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.
Awesome, dude. Let me hurry up and stop this because we're like 30 seconds away. That's so good. Oh, and my alarm just went off on my phone. That was...
Wow.
Save that. That's awesome.